Hey guys, what's up? This is Ethan, and today for this episode of the podcast, I'm here with Dave Minster.
How's it going, guys?
So, Dave, I just wanted to let the people get to know you for a little bit. Like, tell me about your background and just where you came from in ministry. And if you didn't know, Dave is the ministry leader at Gethsemane Church currently. So,
Yeah, so I around sophomore year of high school, I had a pretty impactful experience with the youth minister in my life, and I think that experience really pushed me in a way that where I felt God calling my life to do the same thing. You know, have an impactful, have an impact on other high school students and junior high students and even kids, elementary school kids. And so from that point on, I was pretty set on going to a school for that kind of occupation and that kind of ministry and life path. And so I chose to go to school in Nebraska and pursue a degree in theology and get a certification in our Lutheran church body as a director of Christian education. From there, I came out. I did an internship in Apache Junction, good old Apache Junction, and
it's far out there, man.
yeah, and I ended up staying there after the internship. There was always kind of a option of like, if your church wants you to stay, you know, they'll offer you a job, and if you want to stay, then you'll accept that job. And both those things really lined up, and I really felt God doing a lot of ministry in my life in that church and in that area. So I stayed there for about 7 years, and then recently in July, accepted a call to be the director of student ministries here at Gethsemane Church. During this whole time, I've been doing a lot of youth ministry, high school ministry, junior high ministry, and leading inter-church camp for junior high kids up at Tonto Rim Camp every year for like 6 or 7 years. So that's been a lot of fun. And then working with little kids, elementary kids at Sunday school, and then vacation Bible schools every summer. So doing a lot of that.
Yeah. I remember, man, like we got in contact like, it was probably like
it's like 4
or 5 years ago, like when I was at junior high camp with our previous director of youth ministry, Eric, at Tonto Rim, and I just remember Dave being like up there leading worship, and I was just a weird junior high kid just up there having a blast. And so you have this, like, what really like set you on the path for like youth ministry specifically? I know you said you had that one like person in your life that made an impact. Was that like the sole reason you wanted to go into youth ministry?
You know, I was raised in the church, and so I was around a lot, and up until about maybe 4th grade, I just kind of went because my parents took me. And around 5th grade, I really just started resenting the church and resenting the notion of a God who's up there, and I felt like he was just there to punish me and when I did things wrong, and it's like, man, this is not fun to go to church and be around all this, and like if you messed up, like everybody's gonna feel really angry at you and disappointed in you, and so after that, when my family and I moved to Chicago, I started getting involved in a new youth group and started going to these like events at hotels and like retreats and things like that, a much more active youth group, and hearing the actual message of Jesus and how he's not here to condemn us, but he's here to save us from our own condemnation, how we've put ourselves in a terrible position, and yet like God intervened for us. It's like, man, that's a message that I wanted to take to other people, because it was a message that spoke so loudly in my heart. And then this experience sophomore year of high school, and just being at a really intense retreat for high school students, and seeing my previous like he was our DCE when I was in Indiana, and then he moved to Illinois, and then we moved to a different part of Illinois, and then we both ended up at this same youth retreat. Was like, and just the way the whole weekend worked and how he really encouraged and supported me during that weekend was moved me to a place where I'm like, I can't not want to share this good news with other people. And especially students who are maybe even going through really difficult times in their lives. And you know, through high school, I went through some difficult times, and I think that's a universal experience for everybody. And it's like, I want to be an adult who's walking alongside people going through difficult times, and giving them some really good news that is from the God who created everything.
Yeah, I really, that part about you said about Jesus not wanting to condemn us and like God not wanting to condemn us, because we know in Romans 8:1 it says, there is therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. And I feel like that's somewhere that the church and the people of the church really need to like show that love, that Jesus isn't here to condemn us and say like, this, like, you're screwed up. Like, obviously we are screwed up, but Jesus' grace is what allows us to have that eternal life, and that showing love to like everybody is just something that the church needs to do better. Like, just in this day and age, because in America the Christian church doesn't have the best rep of being like completely loving.
Yeah,
it's shown in statistics of, you know, you can say just take homosexuals or transgender people who don't feel comfortable in the church because they're being condemned or something along those lines. Something definitely the church needs to do better is showing that message of Christ's love and not condemning others, because in the end, like, we're all human. Like, what right do we have to condemn? We don't have that power. But yeah, so we can jump right into the main topic of discussion today. So I've described what the class is in the past, but so in this class of 18 questions that we're in, we take 18 weeks to study these different controversial questions or different relevant topics in today's day and age. For instance, we've talked about Islam, and we've talked about homosexuality and transgenderism and relevancy of the church, social media, and all these different things. And so today, the ones that I really wanted to highlight are euthanasia and social media. So we're going to get started with euthanasia first. And we talked a little bit before about euthanasia and how it's becoming like this more prevalent practice. As in America, people are trying to get policy passed that to make euthanasia legal for terminally ill patients, but in Denmark and other foreign countries, Canada, they're taking it to the extent of mentally ill, like people who are depressed, they can legally end their life. Do you think there's any like right reason for that, for those foreign countries to legally allow patients to like kill themselves in a sense?
I mean, it's always a mixed bag, just because it's a big gray area, because there's just so many circumstances that somebody would want to, you know, and it like breaks my heart to even say it, but like to be euthanized, to die, like they want to die, and it takes, like, a human has to be in just a really dark or deep or hopeless place to want to die, because God put it in our hearts that we want to live. We want to live life. We want to experience beauty around us. We want to have meaningful relationships and journeys and adventures. That's how God created us to be. And so for a human to say, I've just lost hope, is an extremely tough place to be. And so when we think about euthanasia, like, and saying, hey, you know, you're in this really difficult mental, physical, spiritual place, and so here's a way out, man, that really just I think that defies the way we were created to be. We were created to, again, enjoy things around us and enjoy life, and have hope when things are difficult. And so, euthanasia is just it's such a difficult topic because, again, people just are in such a deep and dark place.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think there's a different way out, a much more difficult way out, or a much more painful way out. But ultimately, I wouldn't agree with the fact that it's right so that we can, honor somebody by killing them.
Yeah.
Like that, it's difficult for me to find the circumstances in which that would be true. I think another part of the story that people who want to legalize euthanasia don't talk about nearly as much is the money behind it, and the money being poured into the case for the legalization of euthanasia, just because it costs a whole lot less in insurance to euthanize somebody rather than have them go through 5 years of medical treatments.
Yeah.
And so, of course, an insurance company would want to pay billions of dollars for lawmakers to fight for that cause. And it's like, hold on a sec. So really, we're not even saying that euthanasia is a good thing. We're saying that it saves us money.
Yeah.
And somebody's life is not something you can purchase. You can't buy years of life. And so I think that also becomes a much more outside of morality part of the issue, and really mucks up the water a whole lot more when we're talking about if you die, I don't have to pay this much in health insurance or just medical practices and paying for all these things. It's like that really cheapens life.
Yeah.
And that's definitely not how God intended it to be.
There's definitely an aspect of this, I'd say, devaluation, if that's even a word, of life. Like in today's day and age, whether it's like the topic of euthanasia or even abortion, just that sanctity of human life is just super misconstrued.
Yeah.
In today's day and age, and it's only gonna get worse. It's not gonna get better. And the point of people being there's that weight of people suffering to the point of they want to end their life is just, it makes you feel weird inside. Obviously, I don't think we've both gone through a suffering that deep where we've wanted to take our life. I don't know about you, if you've ever gotten to that point, thought about that, but do you think there's a suffering so deep that would warrant say you'd want to end your life because this suffering got to this point?
I mean, I think it's understandable. In our day and age, even in past generations, I mean, you think about World War II and the things that some of the soldiers saw over there. Holy cow! That's some legitimate and terrifying PTSD that they have to go through, and especially Vietnam and the thousands of cases of PTSD that those soldiers have gone to a place where they're just what is the hope in life based on what I've seen? I think when we talk about euthanasia and the legality of a medical professional ending the life of somebody who's in that desperate case, I don't think there's any legitimate backing for that. A medical professional took an oath, the Hippocratic oath, to say, I am always going to do things for the betterment of my patients, and their health, be that mental health, physical health, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's I really don't think that ending somebody's life could ever be justified in that way for a medical professional. Yeah. Now, if somebody's going to take their own life, I mean, like, what can we do to prevent that? Mm-hmm. Not saying that's a good thing, but ultimately, it's a different ask if you're saying, okay, can somebody who committed suicide get to heaven? Or is it moral for a medical professional to end somebody else's life? And I would say to that question, that latter question, no, it's never going to be a case where a medical professional should be like, all right, well, I'm gonna actively end your life. Now, taking somebody off life support, that's a different story. Yeah. Whereas really, I'm just enabling you to mm-hmm. pass more naturally, or whatever that looks like. But to actively give somebody like a poison or something to the detriment of their physical health, I wouldn't say that's agreeable.
One of the points that one of my friends brought up in class is that how Paul, like, you can see time and time again, like, Paul is literally suffering throughout all of, like, his epistles, and, like, you read about how he's imprisoned and mm-hmm. beat to death, like, literally beat to death over and over and over again, and yet he still pursues on.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the message. Like, people who are depressed or going through mental, like, health issues, people need to back them up and say, like, you got this. Like, this is just a hump you need to get over. Like, it may continue and you may struggle with it, but, like, you push through, something's better on the other side. And people, like, there's people around you who are going to help you and push through, because Paul was not alone in that journey. He may have been alone in, like, when he was going out and journeying, but there were always people praying for him and helping him, like, spiritually supporting him and also financially supporting him, but he always had people backing him. And there's something about that I feel like in today's day and age, like, people are afraid to, like, tell about how they're suffering just because it makes them seem more vulnerable. And I feel like we need to be more vulnerable and, like, become more unified with each other in order to prevent that latter stage of, I'm at this point of suffering where I don't think I want to live anymore. Mm-hmm. And we need to, like, help people realize that they can have a support group who is just willing to fight for them and help them grow. Mm-hmm. So more on the legality in America side of euthanasia, it's only for America, they're trying to pass policy for terminally ill patients trying to end their life just because they're terminally ill. They're most likely gonna die. Mm-hmm. They have a higher chance of anybody else with that disease of dying. Do you think that terminally ill patients should have the option to like, end their life?
That's a tough one. But if we back up, we're all terminally ill.
Yeah.
Like, we're all going to die at some point. And so somebody who's terminally ill, I mean, maybe they get the prescription of, hey, here's some pain meds, go home. You're probably going to live another, like, 60 days, but just enjoy what you can. Maybe they're bedridden or something, and it's like they can't do that. So it's like, here's some pain meds and just live out your time. Like, but I mean, to end somebody, like, again, you can't purchase life. And so to give somebody 50 extra days of life is a massive, unquantifiable gift.
Yeah.
So I would say no, we can't euthanize terminally ill patients for the sheer fact of, like, some life is better than no life. And if their body's ready to shut down, let their body shut down on its own. Let's not encourage it to. Yeah,
we talked about how... your cup's right in front of me. And we talked about how, like, you never know if, even though you are diagnosed with, like, stage 4 cancer and you're most likely gonna die. Like, you don't know you're gonna die. Like, there's been cases, not too many, where people have had or been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and have beat it and live perfectly normal lives now. Like, what happens if that person gets that terminally ill disease, says, okay, I'm gonna die, or I want to die because eventually I am, like, gonna die soon. Like, what happens if there's that chance of them getting rid of the disease? Like, you never know when God's calling you home.
Yeah.
You can't just, my thing is, you can't end your life based on your circumstances here, because you don't know what God's plan is for you later. Yeah, so that's just my biggest thing. Even though it is, like, cheaper to, like, you can obviously, for terminally ill patients, like, you can refuse, like, chemo and stuff. Like, if you have cancer, like, you can refuse all those treatments and then live out your days.
Yep.
Like, I feel like that's a more viable option instead of, like, I'm gonna end my life now where it's not as bad.
Yeah.
But you can refuse the treatment and live it out the days until God is, like, actually calling you home. And that's my biggest thing for euthanasia. So another topic I wanted to talk about was social media. In today's day and age, social media is so prevalent and it impacts so much of culture. And when I say so much of culture, I mean it literally is culture. Like, if you don't have social media, like, you're considered, like, an outcast. Like, you're not gonna be in the loop, so to speak. And do you think social media can be used, like, as a good thing? Obviously there's a bunch of negatives surrounding social media, but do you think ultimately social media can be a good thing?
Social media is kind of like money, where I was talking with somebody last week and they said, well, the Bible says money is the root of all evil. And I corrected them. I said, actually, the Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. And so money is just a vehicle. And what we do with it kind of determines if it's evil or if it's good.
Yeah.
And I think social media is the same thing, where it's like, social media can be a great thing. It's what we do with it. It's just a vehicle. And so I think the love of, and really the obsession with social media is where we have a lot of pitfalls and where we get super depressed because we're not getting enough likes and not having enough followers. And or we just follow rabbit trails on Instagram and Facebook of, like, Facebook's got this feature where if I start watching one video, I scroll down and there's another video that I might like, and mostly it's videos of Russian traffic accidents and things like that. They're just so entertaining. And I just keep going, and just, like, all of a sudden 45 minutes is gone. It's like, what the heck? Like, that's unhealthy.
Yeah.
And social media, these companies that give it to us for free, have to make money somehow. And they do it by providing more and more addicting content. Like, and I say addicting, really what they're trying to do is they're just trying to keep us on their service longer so they can serve more ads, so they can make more money to keep their servers running, and make more money and keep running their business. I mean, it's capitalism at its best.
Yeah.
But essentially what they're doing to us is making us, releasing dopamine in our brain whenever we get a like and log in and see all those likes and all those comments and find things that we want to share and feel important. And when really God designed us to do that in person, and share stories about what happened in person instead of, oh, look at this video I took, or look at this video that I don't even know who took it. I don't even know this person, but they took it and now it's viral and I want to share it. It's like, it's a manufactured relationship instead of a natural, organic relationship.
Yeah. So along those lines, do you think, obviously, there can be good to social media, like, it all comes in the way you use it, but also the major downfall of this is that, like, self-absorption, and also there's definitely like a big part of social media is like temptation. Obviously, like you're on social media, you're exposed to so many things, whether it be anger or like jealousy or lust or all these different things. Do you think that the positives of social media can outweigh the negatives?
So some of the positives, especially in the church world, would be like connecting with people who would never have connected physically with your church.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. I just heard of an app that a church up in Seattle made. I think it's called like Church Home or something like that. But basically it's they tried to bill it as like a virtual church, one where people can get the app, get connected, and then what they did that's really cool, I think, because it's I don't think it's cool to have a church that's only online.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, okay, that's missing the whole point of the church, is to physically gather together and have these natural, like, great, strong relationships where you can cry in front of somebody or leap for joy and they're leaping for joy with you. That's biblical, but looking at your phone is not biblical. Yeah. But what they did with this app is they really try and push, like, okay, what are your interests? And here's some groups of people who are getting together in your area that are interested in the same thing. And they're all kind of being routed through this Jesus-centric app, and then like connecting together based on interests. And I'm like, that's pretty cool. So that, in a way, it's not, the Instagram and Facebook that we know, but it is social and it is media, and it's a positive connection to get people connected with Jesus and with each other. So that's cool. That's positive. That's one app.
Yeah.
And the app stores, Google Play and the App Store have like billions of apps, and very few of them are trying to do that.
Yeah.
All of them are. The rest of them are ways that companies are trying to make money off of consumers, which is a business.
Yeah.
Which is like, okay, I understand that. I get that. That's not evil. But then it's like the way we come back to them over and over, and kids getting addicted to Fortnite and spending hundreds of dollars of their parents' money without them knowing. Not that that's happened recently. So my buddy had that happen to him recently.
That's funny.
And just so there's a lot of ways that social media is sucking away our time and sucking away our support around us, because when we're on social media, we're shutting out. Even if I'm physically with people, which I'm usually people are not. Yeah. Usually you're on social media and you're alone at home or in the bathroom at school or something. I don't know. And when something bad happens on social media, somebody writes a nasty comment or sends a really negative text message or private message, it's like, there's nobody around me to like stand up for me. Mm-hmm. There's nobody around me to help regulate that feeling of, dude, don't listen to them. Like, they're being jerks. And I can just brush it off. But instead, I'm staring at it, and I'm staring at it, and I close the app, and I go right back to it by opening up the app and stare at it again and be like, man, I really am ugly, or I really am, like, my life is not worth living. Like we should have people around us who are hearing these things out loud and reassuring us that we are worth it and that God loves us and that they love us. And social media really undermines that.
Yeah. We talked about this big thing. Like, if you don't have social media, there's this fear of missing out.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
FOMO?
Yeah. And it's just interesting because I've deleted social media. Like, I'd say it was like a process. I deleted Twitter like over the summer or something, just because I literally spent way too much time on it. And then I did the same thing with Instagram, because I was literally, that took my time from Twitter and I put it into Instagram. Yeah. So that got out of control, and deleted that. But then there's this constant, like, I wouldn't say, like, there is that fear of missing out, but whenever I, like, go re-download it just because somebody, like my girlfriend or something, says she posts something, then I want to see it. Like I go through, like, the rest of my feed and I'm like, what am I really missing out on? Like, it's literally, there's sports highlights I could see if I turn on Sports Center and hang out with my family instead of going and sitting in my room and flipping through Instagram. Or, like, maybe there's times where, like, I'd say, like, maybe people get married and they post about it and that's, like, a cool thing that you might have wanted to see. But, like, the rest of it is just, I would say, like, absolute nothing that really, like, is going to impact your life in that big of a way.
Yeah.
Like, and I feel like it's true for all platforms, like, unless the intent of the platform is to actually, like, connect people. And like you said, that one app that the church created to, like, get people together physically. There's this aspect of social media that really devalues the sense of human interaction.
Yeah. Like,
and I feel like Snapchat is probably the biggest waste of, like, or that biggest desensitizing of human interaction, because, like, people are always on Snapchat. Like, Snapchat's literally the only social media platform besides Facebook, but none of my kids my age go on Facebook.
No.
But Snapchat is the only one that I have, and I, like, find myself, like, on Snapchat way too much. Like, I'm on the verge of deleting that too. Like, I'd say the only reason I have it is because I find my girlfriend really pretty and she Snapchats me and I like to see her because we're in a long distance relationship. But that's, like, you scroll, like, you obviously you have, like, streaks with people. And, like, you can have a streak with people that you're never ever gonna talk to in person.
Might not even like them anymore. You might have, like, gotten in a fight, but you're like, well, I have to keep the streak going.
Like a 79-day streak. I can't get rid of that now. We've gone in too deep. But there's this sense in social media where we just see this trend of people not wanting to interact in person, but rather interact over the platform. Like, a big part of relationships in my day and age is that nobody communicates face to face. And that's something, like, so essential, that, like, a skill that you need not just for relationships but for, like, future jobs or just, like, encountering people on the street. Like, you need to know how to communicate face to face. In my generation, like, it's not going too hot. Like, people just keep getting stuck in this loop of social media is the way I'm going to communicate with people. And that's where I feel like, obviously, you're exposed to a bunch of different stuff on social media, but that's a totally different issue. But that lack of human interaction is, like, I feel like is the biggest problem with social media. Would you agree?
Yeah. And I think, before we move to a next subject, but I think the big thing is social media stops us from being bored. Whereas it used to be, before, especially before cell phones and the advent of the internet, is like, we would just be bored. And that would help motivate us to go read a book. Or go read the Bible or do something outside. And now I find that I don't do these things anymore because I'm I can just have fun on social media, or I can load up my strategy game on my iPad that I love playing, or my little quick game on my iPhone that I love playing. And it's just like, man, we're just never bored anymore because of social media, and because there's so many things that I can instantly do instead of waiting a half hour of nothingness and then being like, man, I'm bored. Well, I guess I could go read the Bible now. It's like, we don't do that anymore. And I think social media contributes to that because it's addicting.
Yeah.
And it's fun. Like, it makes me feel good to know what other people are doing. Mm-hmm. And I have a fear of missing out. Like, yep.
It's funny you say, like, never, like, you can never be bored anymore, but, well, like, the biggest times I find myself bored is when I'm scrolling through social media, like, constantly. It's like I'm sitting on the couch for just, like, relaxing, and I would used to go scroll through Instagram. Like, I'd get through the feed, put my phone down, I'd come back 5 minutes later to refresh, to check and see, like, gosh dang it, nothing's there. Like, what else am I going to do?
Yeah, I've done that.
Come back 5 minutes later, nothing's there. Like, and I just end up watching the same videos over and over and over again. I'm like, gosh, this sucks. Like, what am I supposed to do right now besides constantly check if social media is being updated and like if new content is going to be uploaded, or just people are going to share something like gossipy or like new different stuff on Twitter, or like drop a bunch of stuff, or something weird's gonna happen in the celebrity world on Twitter, and everything's gonna blow up about it. Like, did you hear about the Dwight Howard thing over?
I don't think so.
It was like Dwight Howard had all these allegations of like him having relations with a transgender woman, I think, like, was a male, then got like gender switched to woman, and like they had these like relations, and like everything blew up about it, and like I just found myself scrolling through all these funny Dwight Howard memes for like half an hour, and I just, like, it served no purpose in my life besides bringing me like some comedic relief for 25 minutes, and then I had to go back and do an actual thing I had to get done. And it's just weird to see how absorbed culture today has become in social media. Like, it consumes everything. Like, even America's Funniest Home Videos has become like from social media.
Oh, really?
Like you go on YouTube and you could find America's Funniest Home Videos, or you like watch it on TV, and it's like a video you saw on Instagram like 2 days ago. Like, everything is taken from social media and like re-put out there.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something you were talking about with like that capitalistic. So everybody's just trying to make money.
Yeah. And
it's interesting, to say the least, of like how impactful social media has gone. So in all the other podcasts that we've done, we've thrown in like a surprise like topic, and the one that we talked about was this topic of Islam, and how I don't know how familiar you are with Islam or like the people itself, but that's the topic we were studying over this past week. And so one of the biggest questions that we were prompted to write about was, should we fear Islam? Like, as a religion itself, or like the people, do you think we should fear Islam?
That's an interesting question. My gut response is no, absolutely not. I mean, like, I don't know why we would fear Islam except for their violent tendencies of their radicalism. But I think, do we fear Buddhism, or do we fear Hinduism, or do we fear atheism? It's like, no, we as Christians know the truth. We have the hope. We've read the end of the book. We know how everything's going to end. And all these other religions, including atheism, including Islam, say that Jesus isn't the Messiah. And we have the right answer. It's like, well, I don't fear somebody who says I'm wrong about Jesus, because I'm like, well, I already know it's true. Like, you can't just by you saying I'm like, just by some fool walking up to me in the street say you're wrong, Jesus isn't the Messiah. I'll be like, okay, like that's your opinion, but I know the facts. I know the truth.
Yeah.
And I hope that maybe someday I can tell you about that in a way that you'll listen, and it'll open your heart to the reality that Jesus is the Messiah. Like, he's the one that brings salvation. And Islam actively preaches against that, but I don't have to fear it.
Yeah.
You know, they can come and they can, and ultimately we get like this really disproportionate view of Islam from news media and from bigoted people who just look at the radicals and say, oh, Islam is so scary, or oh, Islam is this way. And it's like, hold up, guys. Okay, mainstream Islam is not scary. Mainstream Islam is just like most other religions. The only thing that we should, note about them is they don't believe in Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Like, that's their deal. That's what they believe. And I hope one day that we can share the gospel with them.
Yeah.
And let them know about the truth. But ultimately, any radical Islam, any radical Muslim, we should treat them like any other terrorist who is fighting for a cause that really just isn't true.
Yeah. One of the facts my teacher dropped is that Islam is, in America, Islam is the fastest growing religion. Does that concern you in any way?
I think if it does, it's really in the way of, like, man, we need to revamp what we're doing as Christians. Because why are people converting to Islam, which isn't true, when they're not converting to Christianity, which is true? So it's like, hold on, like, what are we doing wrong?
Yeah.
What are we doing wrong, and what are we not doing? Like, where are opportunities where we as Christians can be spreading the gospel at our workplace? And I think there's a lot of things working against us. We say, well, I can't talk about Jesus at my workplace. It's like, okay, I get that, but how can you show Jesus?
Yeah.
Or how can you continue to grow in your faith? And so Jesus will show you ways that you can minister to people from your workplace or from your school. And so if anything, the rise of Islam, it concerns me about how ineffective Christianity is and not how effective Islam is. Because I know when God turns hearts, he's going to turn all those hearts to Christianity.
Yeah.
And he's going to use people to do that. And I hope it's me, or I hope it's us, or whatever that is. He's got a plan for that. And First Timothy 2:4. Yeah, 1 Timothy 2:4 says, "For God wants all people to be saved and come to a knowledge of the truth of Jesus."
Yeah.
And so it's like, ultimately, I'm not afraid. It just makes me concerned of, like, okay, God's called us to kingdom work, so why aren't we doing it?
Yeah.
And what can we do different, and what can we do better?
Yeah, there was a video I watched of, I think it was this pastor at a church who was a former Muslim, and he was like, he was confronted by people saying, like, Islam is, like, it is a violent religion. He's like, no, it's not. The Quran promotes peace, and and blah, 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 blah. It's a very peaceful religion. And people were like, no, like, if you go dig deep in the Quran, like, it speaks of a ton of violence, like, like, straight from Muhammad's orders to execute those who don't believe in the Quran. And, like, he's like, like, isn't all these, like, wars and, like, speaking of violence, like, justified in the Quran? And, like, he did the studies of the Quran, and he found out, like, it is, like, very violent and very, like, and very, very, I'd say violent. But he said, like, don't ever go up to a Muslim and say, like, your religion is violent, and because they honestly believe that they're a religion of peace, besides, like, the strict Quran followers, like the radical Muslims. Like, the majority of, like, American Muslims, like, they believe, like, Islam is a religion of peace. And it's weird to think. I feel like it's somewhat like Christianity today, like the lukewarm Christian is like, they don't like, obviously Christianity's not like a religion of violence. It is a religion of peace and love, and like just the message of Jesus is all about peace and love. But the Quran speaks of violence so many times and speaks of peace so little, but yet these people are so uninformed about their own religion, and that's also like how the majority of American Christians are. They're so like I Christian, like, but what are you doing in like, what's your heart response to?
Imagine if we had radicalized Christians who are going out and just like selling all their possessions and giving it to the poor. It's like, wait a minute. That would be cool. Yeah. But I agree. Like, I think most of us are like, oh, well, yeah, Jesus is nice, and he's a wonderful counselor wearing a sweater vest, like the sermon today. It's like, hold up. Like, if we're radical Christians, like radical Islamists, Muslims is easier to say, like they're exercising that, and ultimately, like, it's violent, and it comes from this idea, from my understanding, that Islam should be the only religion, and all other people who don't believe Islam, especially if they're given a chance to believe it, should be killed. And it's like, okay, that's a very religious thought, and so obviously that flies in the face of Christianity and every other religion, of like, okay, Islam really doesn't want to cooperate with anybody. They want to be the be all end all. And on the flip side, if we look at Christianity, it's a similar message of like, okay, there's gonna be Jesus followers, and we want everybody to be Jesus followers. But instead of using violence and killing people, we're gonna use love and the fruits of the Spirit: peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control. We're gonna use these things to try and influence people over to believing in the gospel and having salvation. So it just looks different because we're just not killing people.
One of the coolest things that like I didn't really think about when it came in terms of Islam being the fastest growing religion in America. Like, one of the pastors that we interviewed over at Cornerstone, he was like, Jesus doesn't need saving. Like, Jesus is always going to withstand. Like, he's withstood this whole time. Like, he doesn't need saving. There's always going to be people who are going to like be led to the truth and like want to share the truth. Like, obviously numbers might not be like at its peak, but Jesus does not need saving. Which is like, Jesus is self-sufficient in himself, which like really like put it into perspective in my mind. Like we do need to do our job as Christians to go out and share the gospel, but like ultimately Jesus doesn't need saving. Like, people will come to Jesus, and Jesus will open his arms to all who come.
Ultimately, the human quest is to find meaning in this life, which even goes back to our initial topic of euthanasia, of like lost meaning and hope, and we want meaning and hope in our lives. And when people turn to Islam, it seems nice and it seems like it's a full religion, but ultimately they're gonna hit the same spot they were at before, of like, this is empty. It's Jesus, the Church of Jesus Christ and the Latter-day Saints. This is really empty, because now I'm finding out my church doesn't tell me everything. And it's like, wait a minute, like that's terrible, to create this religion that's, you get your own planet, and like, if you're good enough and you have multiple wives and all, and it's just like, and they're withholding that information, like that's empty. That's like dastardly. And whereas Christianity has this full richness to it, where you can study scripture as many times as you want or can, and there's still a richness, because the scriptures are alive, because we believe in a living God. And Jesus doesn't need us to like justify him. He doesn't need a council of people to have this progressive revelation of, oh, God spoke to me about this, and now we can. They're not even supposed to use the name of the whole name, Jesus, the Church of Jesus Christ, or sorry, no, they're not. They're not supposed to refer to themselves as Mormons anymore.
Yeah,
they're stripping Mormon out of their vocabulary and their brand because God told them to, and it's like, no, Jesus doesn't need us to reveal things to the rest of the world. He's already revealed it in Scripture. Mm-hmm. And he's already revealed it in so many different ways, and miracles, and working through people's lives, and we can give a witness of that. But ultimately, he's already given us all that we need, and then some.
Yeah, it's interesting, definitely, to see how these different religions have like popped up over the past centuries, and they just continue to grow. Well, I think we've had a really good discussion. I don't know about you, but Dave, I wanted to thank you for letting us sit down and interview. Thank you guys for tuning in, and hopefully you guys will tune in to our other episodes. Thank you guys, and have a great day.